Two high-profile Canucks, including a superstar, are rumored to be potential high-sell trade candidates during an already nightmarish offseason. Tyler Myers' contract negotiations update gives us an optimistic look, and Elias Pettersson continues to live rent-free inside the head of Frank Seravalli. We'll be breaking all of that down in this episode of Canucks Digest, but first, make sure to hit that subscribe button and click the bell icon so you don't miss any and all updates surrounding the Canucks this offseason. With that, let's hop into the first topic of the day, which is sell high on Hoglander or Boeser. That's not what I'm saying. That's what Jamie Dodd and Thomas Drance are saying on their podcast, where they don't believe Nils Hoglander's ceiling case involves him being a consistent 25-goal guy. And when you look at Hoglander's stats in 80 games, 24 goals, 12 assists, 36 points, plus 23 rating. Great things were happening when he was on the ice. He got almost half of his career goals this season alone and over a third of his career points in this past season. He was a player that continued to emerge throughout the season and got better and better. It's his best season since his rookie season. And he's a player that I know a lot of fans love and would love to see him continue to evolve with his career in Vancouver and keep fans of the opposing teams hating us for having him on our team and wishing that they had him on theirs. I think he's a player that, especially on a team where you need a bit more of that third and fourth line depth, and I think he definitely brought that with players like Sam Lafferty and Phil DiGiuseppe, who were productive in the first half of the season and then dwindled into the later half in the playoffs. But I think if Hoglander can continue on this pace, he will bring that much needed depth to the third and fourth lines, where you're not relying on your top two lines to get stuff done in the playoffs and get neutralized and become a two-dimensional team, where you have those third and fourth lines where they can show up and step up and be productive and get the pucks in the net when the big guys are being shut down. We've seen that happen with many teams throughout the postseason, where we shut down their superstars, you win the series. We saw that happen with Colorado. We haven't seen it entirely happen with Edmonton, but we're seeing it happen across the league in the playoffs, where if you don't have that third and fourth line depth, you're not going to go very far. So unless you have the best player on earth, that is a very rare case. But again, you need to have that depth involved there. And speaking of depth, one player who is a superstar that Vancouver doesn't want to lose that they also talked about was Brock Boeser. They talked about the potential of a Brock Boeser trade. And when you look at his stats from this season, that is just insane. I know he missed the last part of the playoffs with the Game 7 blood clot. It's unfortunate with him, but in 81 games, 40 goals, 33 assists, 73 points, plus 23. So like Hoglander, great things were happening when he was on the ice, and he undoubtedly is the best player on the team. He had another career year on a season where many Canucks had career seasons. Quinn Hughes, Brock Boeser, Elias Pettersson, JT Miller, Connor Garland, Dakota Joshua, Nils Hoglander, Artur Shilovs with a breakout season. This is a team that showed so much promise as far as a depth perspective and had so many players have career years where you just want to see it continue, where the sky could be the limit for this Vancouver Canucks team, depending on health and other contract negotiations and offseason moves, of course. But if you look at those players alone, if they continue to grow and continue to be productive, this team could be one of those unstoppable teams going forward, where they just have four lines deep, they get pucks deep, and they get pucks in the net, which everyone knows are the keys to victory. But if you have a team like that, they could be very, very scary, where you don't just have a team where you're a one-line wonder, where if you shut down the best player, you're gonna win the game. They could be that four-headed monster of a team where no matter what line is on there, you have to have your guys playing at their best to keep them locked down. I think Vancouver definitely has a chance of doing that. When you look at their lines too, if you take Boeser out of that equation, amongst a season where Dakota Joshua could also be leaving, and then if you bring in Martin Nikas like they want to bring in on that trade, I think trading Hronek for him is a much better thing. We'll get to that on in a second. But you don't want to have too much shakeup here because the chemistry is so good with this team. We've talked about Joshua and Garland, how they're the Batman and Robin of this team. JT Miller, Elias Pettersson, and Brock Boeser played so well this season. I know Mikheyev is on there potentially, where there's a whole other video on him potentially coming as far as what his value to the team is. And then when you have Brock Boeser back, he will be in that left wing position. So I don't know how you can just rationalize getting rid of Brock Boeser, considering all that he's been through personally, all that he's been through with the city, all that he's been through throughout his career. He is that superstar for Vancouver and the team that they built around until Elias Pettersson was also brought into that equation. Then you have Quinn Hughes. He is part of the four pillars that holds this team together, so I don't imagine a world where we get rid of him. I know his contract is going to be coming up on expiry next season, but I don't think that this is the time to move him. I think this is the time where you bring him back and you have an even better season. Yes, his value will go up that way, but I think if you bring home a cup, that might not matter. If that is the end result of this, okay, he can walk after that maybe, but that's a whole other conversation for another day. But I think keeping Boeser in Vancouver, at least for next season, is a priority. And I think the idea of trading him is just ludicrous. I don't think that it'll happen, and I hope it doesn't happen. But speaking of something to be a glimmer of hope, we have an update on Tyler Myers. Not entirely a complete update. However, it is Dollywall reporting that Tyler Myers' deal, when said and done, looks like a 2 to 3 year range, tad under $3 million per year. I think this is a fairly hometown friendly deal for Tyler Myers. He is someone that fans do enjoy. He is a tall, lanky defenseman where he has shown a lot of production and promise for this team, and a lot of great chemistry with Quinn Hughes. We have Zadorov is there as well. So if Zadorov leaves, you definitely want to keep a guy like Myers around where he can be not the wide body, but he can be the tall body where he can swarm the superstars like we saw him do with McDavid this postseason, where he didn't allow McDavid to do much. He contained him very well. So I think if you keep him around and then you go out and you acquire a defenseman like Brendan Dillon, if you lose Nikita Zadorov or Joel Edmondson, I know he's a veteran that's out there. He didn't have a great season with Toronto, but if you bring him in as a veteran piece, maybe that adds something to it, along with Quinn Hughes as an emerging leader as well. So there is a lot of opportunities for Vancouver to kind of have Tyler Myers and Quinn Hughes be the two anchors on defense that they can build around throughout this offseason, especially with Nikita Zadorov's price just wanting to be demanding of the world and not being able to keep Elias Lindholm. So if they have Zadorov and Lindholm off of their hands, that's a lot less problems to have to deal with and a lot less money to have to worry about moving around. So I think this look on Tyler Myers is a great look for Vancouver. I think it leads towards him looking likely he's going to come back next season. I love it. I love that news. I'm sure fans are going to be happy about that news. He is someone who didn't score a lot of goals, but like we said, he's been able to contain superstars and contain some of the team's best players. And I think that's someone you want going forward. But someone who has been in the media, but not just him, but is also the reporter covering him, Frank Seravalli versus Petey, Part 2. And we saw on the Sekeres and Price podcast that Seravalli thinks that the jaws were on the ground floor to hear Pettersson try to blame part of his issues on the play in the second half on the knee, and then elaborating further saying that he refused to move on why people are defending Pettersson when he refused an injury as an excuse and aren't giving Hronek any leeway when he refused any injury as an excuse. Sekeres was clearly annoyed. And then you have someone responding, why would their jaws be on the floor if he was working with team doctors when the injury did happen? And this is a case where the fans, I think, caught Seravalli just trying to chase headlines once again, like he did a few days ago, trying to call out Petey again. Petey just continues to be just living in his head rent-free, not knowing he doesn't know what to do if he's not talking about Pettersson, it seems. The Oilers are just, everyone's talking about the Oilers, so he needs something else to talk about. And I can see why he's going after Petey like this when Hronek did have the outspoken press conference that he had when talking about the injury. But Hronek, I think he's going to be shipped out anyways for Martinikas, so I don't think Vancouver was too worried about his response in that, because he was just up there it was just a mandatory thing for him when he knows he's probably going to get shipped out. However, with going after Pettersson and just adding more noise that Petey just doesn't want to deal with, I'm sure he probably doesn't even pay this any mind, to be honest, but he is wanting to get back on track for next season, and this is just another distraction, another piece of noise that is just trying to rattle him and the fans and the media. But I don't think it's going to be something to be worried about going forward. I think the Canucks have full faith in Petey, and I think that we're going to see a different Petey next season, like I've continuously said and like we've continuously said on this show. But like we've continuously said on this show, that was going to bring us to comment of the day. And when you see here with comment of the day, the user says, Vancouver has a UFA nightmare on their hands. And if you've been following us for the past few days, they do. We've been talking about all the contracts, all the different amounts that are going to be needed to keep players happy. And it is a lot for the Canucks. They have a lot on their hands. They have a lot of money to move around, a lot of players, and a lot of smiles to keep on people's faces. I don't know if they're going to be able to do all of that per se. However, there's going to be some compromises to be made. But if you keep a core part of the team happy and a core part of fans happy, you don't have to worry about anybody else, because those aren't the real fans anyways. If this team stays true to who they are and gets rid of any people who are trying to ask for too much or who aren't doing their part or just aren't speaking the way that they should be in the media, that's something for Vancouver to deal with. That's something Allvin will deal with. Tocchet as well, being a player's coach, he's not going to tolerate anything that should hurt the integrity of the team. So I think it's going to be definitely a nightmare that we're hopefully going to see the light at the end of the tunnel sooner than later. But again, for everything for the Canucks this postseason, stay tuned to Canucks Digest. That'll do it for today. Take care.